Welcome to the I'm Telling God About This podcast. Today, hot button topic, personal finance, money, how well you manage your finances determines how well you love God. We want to know in the comments your number one personal finance rule, your number one tip, your number one trick. We're going to be sharing our practical, tactical tips and tricks around how we're managing our finances. We're probably going to literally tell you everything except for the amount of money in our bank accounts. So if you want to know how Nick or Josh or Tim steward their finances, stick around because we're going to bear all. Gentlemen,
I don't know.
Let's talk about
play
money.
Higher or lower. Let's do it.
Higher or lower.
I'm not playing that game.
Let me just save it. I work for a nonprofit. I will lose. I'll just go ahead and
I don't
take
know about
the tier.
that. I don't know about that.
And actually, this is actually a really good segue because for me, I'm so passionate about this topic. There's a lot of reasons I'm really passionate about it, but I'll tell you one of the main reasons. The Lord has dealt me and my family a deck of cards that is unlike many of my other friends, and therefore I must be a master poker player to be able to stay at the table with the rest of them. Obviously, this is an analogy, but like I was sitting down with one of my really wealthy friends the other day, and I had this analogy for him, and he's like, he loved it because it's like, you know, I'm being a steward with what I have, and it might be a nonprofit salary, but man, let me just tell you, when I tell you guys about some of the poker hands I have that I'm playing for the Liberto finances, I got some cards up my sleeve. Let's just put it that way.
No, you got to be creative sometimes.
No, it's definitely true. Yeah, I mean, it's always something that's hard for. We talked about this the last time we covered this topic, more generally, but there is definitely a difference in what you're able to accomplish and how you are, like the types of strategies and philosophy around money based on what you're doing. So whether or not it's like you're under the constraint of not having a lot of money or not having a lot of income from like an actual job versus say having a higher income, but then your circumstances, like for instance, like Nick is stable, lives in one place, has been able to build equity, watch a market, invest based on, information that he has basically gotten through, I won't want to call it sweat equity, but like stability equity effectively, right?
Yeah,
like
both.
by having
both.
knowledge, right? Literally both, right? And both of those things versus something that's different for like in my situation is I move every couple of years. And so, and I don't get a choice of what market I'm in. And I'm usually pressured into the times that I can come in. So the normal ways in which the most common way people make major strides in income in this country is through what's it called, property, like
historically, which is
yeah,
dramatically changing right now. So that's
well,
a
it's
whole.
still, I'm pretty sure it's still.
Right?
I don't have the numbers up in front of me, but I would be willing to bet that it's still very much the largest
World War II,
one has been property. Property ownership and equity in
I just wouldn't give that advice right now.
Correct.
No, I wouldn't either.
And if you're a Gen Alpha, that is not going to be your story, which is another. We talked about this last episode, but that's why I'm so passionate about finance as well, is because my children will not be able to purchase an asset like I was able to purchase an asset. And how do I know this? Because I can't purchase an asset right now like I used to be able to purchase an asset.
Right.
And so it's like,
well, we bought these things as foreclosures for pennies, and then you're looking at them in Zillow, you're like, I'm rich.
I don't want to talk about it because I had, this is what's frustrating.
Talk about it.
Yeah, it's like I bought a house in
Did
the
you
same
see what
neighborhood
it's for
as
sale
Tim.
for
Right, I did.
now?
Like literally double what I paid for it, but I wasn't able to hold on to it based on our circumstances because we were going on. No, I know that, but what I'm saying is that that's part of what I'm talking about is like that ability has changed to the point where now that's part of the reason coming overseas. Originally, I was frustrated because I was like, man, I really want to be able to buy a house at my next duty station. And when we came overseas, like that, but the housing market was insane. And so I'm like, if I had stayed in the States, I would have been very tempted to buy in the current market, which I didn't want to do. at the time, depending on where I would be stationed at. And
It's brutal.
yeah, I know, right? And then, but so now, now we're hanging on. But, compare that to like Nick and Tim and Josh. You have a mortgage too, right? You bought your place.
Yeah, we got we purchased after or during, right as the big housing crisis of 2008 crashed. We ended up buying a nice condo in California, San Diego area, which was able to really help us to have a little bit of mobility, going other places once we decided to cut any ties with California altogether. So yeah, it's
Do you still have family
it's
there,
been
by
helpful.
the way?
We still have family there. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I have a feeling
So not cutting
though
all ties.
I guess not cutting all ties. There's family ties, but okay, maybe that's to be before everybody's time.
You've seen the demographics of our audience, buddy. They're not going to get that.
You lost it on me.
Anyway, but yeah, so there's it's times of the market, right? Like there was a big crash, big housing crisis. A house that forecloses that was maybe originally sold for $400,000, then is now sold or is foreclosed and a bank sells it for under $2 million, right? So there's all kinds of things that you would see in the environment that we're in. So we don't know if there's going to be another housing crisis that everything drops. But even if there and if and when that there is, will it be the same opportunity? Will all these big corporations like BlackRock or start buying up all of these homes, these Redfins, Zillow, do they start buying up the homes and then flooding the market, and then it reduces the amount of ability to invest or purchase a home?
Well, that
have
is
that equity.
That is definitely a big change recently or since COVID is these multi-conglomerates. I think I read a statistic of something like 75% of the basically
that was a little bit disproven, but they did come in and start buying a little bit. And really
that's a lot. A little bit's kind of an understatement.
No. It was like 20%. It was never 75%.
20, that's it? 20% of the available...
The market share that the conglomerates came in and purchased of like all available houses in the market, it wasn't that huge. That was disproven. It was a narrative in the news for a really long time, for like the last 3 years.
It was like
some markets are
find
different,
someone
though.
to blame.
Yeah. So
what I'm
trying to say is what we're discussing are the nuances and the details of why everybody needs to be paying attention, because we're here talking about tactical strategies, and one of them is you need to be paying attention. And so Anderson talking about buying in 2008, whether or not that was intentional, massive strategy move,
right,
and price appreciation on the asset. One of my strategies, very tactical strategies, which I've now done successfully twice in a housing market. So I knew, again, I was paying attention. I don't know, not a lot, an appropriate amount of time, reading the news, reading headlines, consuming a little bit of content. I knew interest rates were going to be going up. They weren't secretive about that. Everyone was saying interest rates are going to be going up. And so what I did was I was like, okay, I'm going to start looking because just see what happens. And we bought a duplex because I knew I had a window of time before they literally had the date that was announced when the interest rates were going to go up. And I was like, I'm going to see if I can get in before then. And so Christmas Eve 2 years ago, we made an offer on a duplex right as the market started to get hot. It was still hot, but we were able to offer under asking. And that's my tactic and my strategy, which I have now learned. We even just recently bought a piece of property in this crazy market the week before Christmas. So if you do have to buy a house and you can afford to wait, my number one secret right now, or tactic when it comes to acquiring physical assets like property, is start hunting in November, because at that point, if it's on the market, it's staying on the market. It's not a hot market. It starts to wane. And then make an offer like 3 weeks before Christmas when everybody feels generous and nobody's going to open houses. And literally twice now it's worked. And we've gotten significantly under asking price twice by doing that.
Well, and would you say that people who are typically selling in that environment, they're not listing during the peak times, right? So there's probably some motivated reason they're selling in the first place, right?
Yeah, or they're trying to move it fast, or they priced it wrong, and then they're so it's like, it sounds bad to say it this way, but like I'm not taking advantage of them, but I am absolutely, like, if you're listening to this, I would say, don't you ever sell a house from October through February, because people like me are going to come in and undercut you and try and take advantage
unless
of
you're
you.
willing to wait for the summertime to sell it officially. Yeah,
Exactly.
Well, let's take a quick step back, because we're talking about houses, and I mean, ultimately, that's a big wealth builder. But our demographics are, that we were looking at, some of the people that are commenting on our videos, as well as some of the YouTube analytics, is we got people in their 20s, mid 20s to mid 30s, right? Is a huge demographic of who we're talking to here. So if I'm a 25-year-old, like let's say this, Nick. 25-year-old Nick Liberto, okay?
Oh, dude,
or let's say
if I could go back and tell myself something at 25, let me.
Well,
I'll just-
I mean,
let me
what
go.
would you tell your own son or daughter? And
Yep.
what would the strategy be different, right? What would you tell your son or daughter in high school, out of high school, in college, or
20s.
whatever?
Two
20s.
things.
We're not the
I have it. I'm already there.
Go for it.
Here's
All
what
right.
if you're listening and you're under 26. I was going to 30, but I'm actually thinking 26.
26, all right.
Because I really started at 30, and I wish I had started at 22.
Well, we didn't really have much of a choice, but yeah.
Here's
Just
the
a-
two things. Here's the two things I'm going to teach and tell my children. Obviously, there's a lot, but like my two best things are, no matter what you want to do and all the fun you want to have and all the playthings you want to go buy, you need to be saving up a little bit of a nest egg for some form of some kind of down payment. It's going to be different for everybody. It might be $5,000, it might be $10,000. But because you can still come in as a first-time home buyer on a 3.5% down FHA loan on a house, you can probably still make do with a $5,000 to $10,000 egg. And so what I wish I had known was like, ooh, I should have started saving for that as much as possible, because my dad never told me that. I never had any idea what a down payment on a house was. I just always thought it was, I just have $100,000 and I hand it to somebody and I now have a house. So, number one, save for the single purpose of being able to buy an asset, and you just need to have 3.5% of whatever the thing is you want to buy. And then the second thing that I wish someone had told me is compounding interest. I would have started a 401k, Roth, whatever, as early as possible. And so, like, I had a friend of mine I mentor. He actually mentor. He was 18, 19, got his first job at Walmart. Do you know what the first thing I said to him was, which he had no idea about? And Sean, if you're watching, I love you, bro. he didn't even know that they had
Walmart
a matching
matches,
program, a significant, it's like 6, 7, 8%.
That's pretty good.
And like, I just did basic back of the napkin math with him, and at 19 he started, bro, like, he is just crushing it right now
The
because
number
he
of
started
people
at
who-
19.
The number of people who don't know that they, or don't take advantage of their employer's matching contribution, it's literally free money, guys. Like,
That compounds. And the
compounds,
earlier you start, the more the secret sauce begins.
Correct.
right.
Yeah. Well, let me pause here on that note, because here's a so point counterpoint, right? Agreeing with Nick. Sometimes, people who listen to this, you might be, here you guys who think you if you're younger, like in your 20s, you might think, oh well, I'm special. The world is crazy. You didn't grow up in a pandemic. I grew up in a housing crisis after a massive economic recession. And
Huge unemployment.
20 years of war and unemployment. So if you think like, oh well, you guys don't know what it's like out there. No, I promise you. The millennials, especially the elder millennials, have had to restart more times and rebuild
that's true.
more times than any other generation has to this point. So,
Are they really looking at us the way we look at boomers? Is that what I'm hearing?
No, they just think that we're all the same.
hurts,
Like they
guys.
yeah, I know, right? Like we know the
We're not
pain,
like
but
them.
but I will throw this
Right.
out there to you, because here's something to think about, right? Here's what we didn't have though that you guys do have, and that we're also dealing with now as well, is we didn't have 20% inflation in like 2 years. Okay,
correct.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'll full disclosure, I'm a captain in the United States Army with 13 years of service. You can Google how much money I make, right? So I'll just go ahead and tell you it's somewhere in the vicinity of like $120,000 a year, ballpark. However, like that's with BAH and all that if I was living in the States. But my point is like you can, if you're not making good money, even though I make that much money, that's like making, 100,000 5 years ago. And, if I was making 100, it's like making 80. So then on top of that, you're talking about, imagine if, I worked at Starbucks, I worked part-time stuff. I've done a lot of different things in my life, and I understand how difficult it can be to put that kind of money away. And to Nick's point, even places like Waffle House and Walmart and Starbucks have matching plans, and have
if they
these types
don't
of
have a
things.
matching plan, you can still start up a retirement
Correct.
account early on.
You can still get
without
compounding
a matching
interest,
plan
right?
and still
Correct.
get it. Yeah.
It's just extra, right? But here's my other thing I want to throw out to you. There are benefits, and it's one of the things that worked out for me is part of the reason I joined the military, okay? Now, I had reasons for joining the military before I became a chaplain, but one of the things that comes with that are things like your VA loan, your small business loan, where, hey, you know what? Think about this. How much time do you think it would take you to save working part-time $10,000? A good bit of time, especially if you have to live off of that, or like if you're working a minimum wage job. If you have to live off of that money,
Strategy
not living in
number
somebody's house.
2, live with your parents and save $10,000.
Do whatever you can. Or, and this is what I would even say, especially if you're in your younger 20s, there is nothing wrong with a deliberate 4-year decision. In your 20s, you think 4 years sounds like a lot of time. I'm going to tell you right now, it's not. It's not. 4 years is nothing. When you think about 4 years in the scale of like what I just said, think about how much time it takes you. It would take you, if you do the math, do the, the beer math, and figure out how much time is it going to take me to save, spending the way you normally do, or making cuts that you think you can actually manage, like to save up the down payment on a house, all right? Probably going to take you about 4 years or more. Mm-hmm. So you could either continue slugging it out and doing whatever you're doing, because if you can't afford to go to college or you can't do those things, you could go do 4 years of indentured servitude to the federal government, and you can come away with a lifetime of benefits to include not having to pay a down payment on a house, not having, mortgage insurance, a small business loan, guaranteed small business loan, if you've got a good business plan, for almost $1 million now. Free school. Like, so, strategy, big strategy, like you're an American citizen, you have benefits that are at your disposal. Josh, part of the reason that Josh was able to buy in 2008 was because he was young petty officer,
Yep.
No college at the time.
Third class. no
with
college at the time.
No college at the time.
No degree.
Petty officer.
No nothing.
How old were you? How old were you?
VA loan. I was
That's right.
20. Gosh.
Oh, VA loans. I'm so jealous
Like
of you two.
23,
I
24.
know.
That's what I'm trying to tell you. 24. When I left the military, or when I left active duty to go to seminary, and I had BA, I was getting my BAH, I was able to buy a house and use the payment that I got a stipend to pay for my living expenses that's supposed to cover rent, but instead of paying rent, I paid into a mortgage. And I not only paid myself to live, but when I eventually sold that house, even though I didn't sell it for double, I still made a good profit, and I basically lived for free for 4 years. Like, you can't beat that. So, Josh, what were you going to say?
I was going to say that, just doubling down on what you were saying, if you're looking at doing a 4-year service in the military, there's a lot of benefits. Now, granted, I don't know what that's going to look like in the next 10, 15 years, what benefits are going to happen there. But doing 4 years, it's quick. Find a job that you would be good at, that you enjoy, and don't sign up unless you get it guaranteed in your contract that you're doing the job that you want to do. Don't go and just sign up undesignated, or I just want to do whatever MOS or whatever rating. Go and find a job that you want to do. For in my case, I did IT work. And
Yep,
I did
me
IT
too.
work before the military. So when I went into the military in the Navy, I did IT work, and I got to do not only IT work with the networking and servers and sysadmin stuff and systems engineering stuff. I also did radio communications, right? So now I'm like, whoa, I've got 2 avenues of which
That
I can
pay
do.
a lot
Going
of money
into,
right
yeah.
now.
And so now I'm now here I am at 22 years old in the Navy with computer certifications that the Navy paid for, training and on the job training. I can go to work right now. I'm only a year into the military. I can go to work right now. Also, you get your VA loan, right? You get post 9/11 GI Bill, right? Also, you get, in addition to that, you get your tuition assistance, right? You stay in for 4 years or whatever. You get $250 or something, that for free to go to community
Liberty
college
University.
or something and start building.
That's
there.
right.
Can we get the
and
military
all
to
the classes-
sponsor this episode?
I know.
and all the classes,
But it's a
all
real
the classes
big-
that you're taking in the
Oh, yeah.
military for your C schools, your A schools, you get college credits for, mostly electives type things. So, that's one avenue in which you can, you're going to pay your fair share of taxes in the future. Why not get
sure.
the most out of Uncle Sam that he could give? Now, granted, that's just one aspect of it, right? And that may
it's-
not be for everybody, but it's
It's
an option.
not. It is, but this gets to the bigger point, and this is kind of this is a strategic thing, right? So, like,
Yep.
I'll use Nick and I as an example of this, right? Nick and I went to college right out of high school, and we went and signed up for super fun sounding major that we were super interested in and passionate about.
Yeah.
But
Underwater basket
that
weaving.
was foolish. Like, I mean, wasn't quite that bad.
I can
but it
sell my
wasn't
degree still,
much better.
but it
I
was
can.
not.
I learned a lot.
I don't know,
but
man. I
here's-
think
yeah.
you really
Was
apply
it
your
worth
lesbian
the money?
dance theory pretty well in your life.
I know, right? It's but like we got a degree. I
Don't
tell
out
people
me.
all the time. Like I
did
used
go
to
to
feel
Liberty,
really
man.
bad because I remember even when I was in seminary
Heterosexual dance therapy.
making
Sorry,
decent.
go ahead, Josh. Go
Sorry.
Josh.
I will go to
My bad.
places sometimes, and I like. Here's the thing. Like, you have to make choices. I have this conversation with young soldiers all the time about. I'm going to get out of the military. And I'm like, okay, what are you going to do? Oh, well, I'm going to be a cop, or I'm going to be a mechanic, or I'm going to do one of these things. And I'm like, okay, here's what I want you to think about. Do those people make a lot of money? Yes, they do. And I'll even add another one in there, like doctors, especially like family doctors. Okay, do they make a lot of money? Yes. Do they have to work hard to make that money? Also, yes. There's a difference between like being a mechanic where like if you can do 2 jobs in the time the book says you should be able to do 1, you make double the money. But the point is in no scenario are you working less than a
Breaking your
50-hour
back.
work week.
Yep.
Right? And so you're going to keep doing that. And so your investments and stuff matter for, talking about building
We're gonna get into
income,
that,
compound interest,
yeah.
and all that. But the job you choose, and since our demographic is so young, I would say there are jobs, and I used to feel really guilty about this because working in IT, you're paid to be there for when things don't go well, like, and to do the front end work to get things done right. And so I would feel horrible. I'm getting a haircut, and this poor lady's been working all day long. She's exhausted. She's got a ton of stuff going on, and I'm sitting there going like, I mean, I guess I'll go back to work today. I mean, I don't like.
Must be nice.
Everything's not, everything's good. Like, no, there's no fires. I've done my job well, so therefore I don't have to do it often. So like, and I feel bad, and I look, and I kind of want to tell them, or like cab drivers and stuff. I'm telling them all the time. I'm like, look, like, go work, get into IT. Like, it's not going away.
Yeah.
It's low impact. It's high paying, and everything
you
that you need
overestimate
to know
how
to
many
do it.
people are capable of doing that.
Okay, maybe.
Like,
I mean, maybe I'm.
Because here's the trick, right? You're saying you're paid to be there when things go wrong. Okay, well, right. So that's you're the relief pitcher who's sitting on the bench for almost all the entire game, every game. But
Right.
when you get called up, you
go
better
time.
be able to drill 3
right.
fastballs
100%.
into the catcher's mitt, or you don't get paid to sit on the bench
Correct.
the rest of the time. Like that's
Correct.
that's the trade-off. You must
Competence is still-
succeed.
Yeah,
You
competence is non-negotiable. But what I'm getting at is that all the tools are available to the average person to
And I
learn
think
those things.
The higher level thing we're really talking about is a conversation I wish I had had more of when I was younger. Not like, oh, woe is me, I wish my parents had done this with me. Just in
No.
general, I'm excited to have these conversations with my children where it's like, yo, let's just talk about it. Let's just think about it. Let's just make a plan. Let's just like, man, if I could figure out a way to go back and do it again and get a pension, oh my gosh, can I just tell you how much I would have set my sights on those things instead of other things or whatever it is. Yeah.
So you might be in a different camp.
How many of you guys, now some of you, I know you guys, some of you have younger kids, but how many of you guys have had conversations even with your younger kids about what do you want to do when you grow up? What are you, what do you think?
Me too.
Right? Like these are the kind of things that I'm constantly, as a regular question with my sons is, asking, what do you want to do? And the jobs range from being an astronaut and selling lemonade. But getting their mind on this process and talking to my young men, my own young boys, talking to them and saying, look, your job is to grow up and to be a man that can take care of a family. Yep. That's your job. I'm trying to set you up for success, but ultimately at the end of the day, I'm not going to take care of your family.
You got to do it. That's
it. You got to take care of your family. You are going to be starting your own family unit. Now, granted, as inflation gets crazy and as, the expenses go up, we might be moving more into a more communal society where, when I was a kid, they were balking at the idea that you could have, health insurance for your children through age 26 because they were living at home and not moving out. And I'm like, I'm moving out as soon as I possibly can.
Nice.
But now it's just like, but now
I got cut off before Obama came around.
Now it's almost to the point where you absolutely have to stay in your home until you get married or until you are capable of, having your own place to live or your own.
I get the feeling a lot of people aren't even taking advantage of those things
because they don't know because they're not having the conversation, which is why we're having the conversation.
Right. Yeah, well, and I guess like on the
go ahead, Tim. No, go.
No, just from like the saving standpoint, like I'm super sympathetic with all of the challenges because we're obviously sitting here talking about buying a house and so many people listening to this are not even at the beginning of step one on what it takes to do all of that but this step one is actually structure your budget to save money. I've made I've lived on, I think the least amount of money that I actually had to live exclusively on was about $8 an hour. Okay. And I've done that. I saved money. I wasn't like running, not a lot, mind you, it's not that much money, but I definitely wasn't financing things that I couldn't afford or financing things that I could afford him when I otherwise wouldn't be able to.
Right.
I wasn't racking up credit card debt that I was revolving. Like I lived within my means, and people either aren't doing that or sometimes you can kind of like end up sneaky not living within your means because you're making your budget and your expenditures without respect to the kind of necessary maintenance. What happens when you need a $400 wheel bearing and you've structured your lifestyle to where you can't absorb that kind of cost?
That's a hard reality, isn't it? You go and you have next to nothing, right? And you're living out of an apartment with 50% of your income going towards rent, and then your car breaks down, and you got $300 is a lot of money when you're living 50% going to your rent, right? Like that's a very difficult road. You ate, Well, so here's the thing. Here's also the thing. I think we talked about this. Never underestimate the capabilities of a single man being able to live on next to nothing.
Josh,
right.
Let me tell you a story about this.
I got a blanket.
Let me
it's
tell
too
you a story
hot.
about
Let me
this.
take off my clothes. Like there's
listen.
literally no limit to the amount of contentness that a man can have. I can't speak to what a woman
live
would
in
do,
a hammock?
but
I literally listen to this. All right, so let me tell you a story about being poor and strategies, right? This is how you do it, right? I'm gonna tell you. So like I have no sympathy for my junior soldiers and especially even like my lieutenants and stuff with all their disposable income and all these things like they're making like even if they're making $30,000, $40,000 a year, like no sympathy. They have a roof, right? So I lived I would live in the dorms on campus for a couple years, and then I realized
they're expensive.
Yeah, they're expensive because I found out how these things were getting financed because, I'm learning too as I go along. My parents were poor missionaries. They weren't making that much money. So like student loans were a necessity for like those things. And I only had like 18,000 in student loans, which for
just to be clear,
all things
his
considered,
parents were good missionaries. They were
the good
poor,
kind.
good missionaries.
They were poor because the missionaries don't make a lot of money, right? So
and they listen, and we love you guys.
Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to be able to move when I graduated from Liberty. I wanted to move out west, and I knew that was going to cost a good bit of money to kind of like set myself up and get established, right? And so we had this big house. A friend of ours, Caleb, had this house we called the Finn House, and it was a bunch of people living in this house, right? Like even one guy, Jeremy, he lived in the closet. He would literally like roll out, and this is like Harry Potter style. Like he literally would like roll out, and he was like half in the closet, and he would sleep on the floor on this like tatami mat style mattress. And
those sauna
there'd be
moments
two
were
or
probably
three. Yeah, we'd
awkward
be in the
with him living
sauna in the
closet
basement.
all that time.
No, but no, downstairs where the sauna was. There were a couple guys in hammocks down there. So, I went to Caleb and I was like, dude, can I stay at your house? And he's like, we don't really have space. And I was like, well, can I sleep in the backyard? And he was like, you're okay with that? I was like, yeah, dude. I was like, can I just like leave my stuff in the house and like shower and stuff in the house? And he was like, yeah. So I lived in a Hennessy hammock with like a rain fly and a bug net in the backyard of this house for like 6 months to save money before I moved out west. And, those are the kinds of things. And that was one of the things that reminded me, if you're listening to this and you're in college, if I could go back in time, I'm going to give a little spoiler because I got a small business idea for this one day, so maybe someone could steal it. But if I were a young person going to school or in college now, I would, instead of paying rent or paying to live in a place, and if you can't own a home, I would buy a tiny house or like an Airstream camper, even if it's expensive. Even if you think about, that's $60,000 for a Caravel. Well, if you do the math on it, Airstreams hold their value very well. You can rent them when you're not in them. You can Airbnb them. You can stay in different places.
Buy an acre to put it on.
And you buy or buy an acre. You have friends. There are people who live around you that would be willing to let you park it on their property. And my point is this: you could either burn rent or live in a one bedroom in a shared apartment, or you could have your own Airstream, which is roughly the same size. And when you graduate college, you can hitch that joker up and roll out of there with the place for the next place that you move to live. Like, I don't know why I didn't do that. Like, if I could go back and change one thing in college, apart from what I majored in, that would be it. Like, well, I'm happy with what I studied in school, but I'm just saying, like, I should have not listened. I should have just done the work and done
one of the things that
like
you touched on, Josh, that I think is really impactful is the value of a roommate, the value of somebody to share your burdens with. I remember growing up, my dad was a pastor. He was making a pastor's income in San Jose, of all places, Silicon Valley. We couldn't afford it. Every single place that we lived, we had a roommate. Every single place. Yeah. I don't remember growing up without a roommate, right? We had 3 kids, a family of 5, and 2 roommates sometimes. All the kids were in like one bedroom. Mom and dad were in another bedroom, and then we have a bedroom for a roommate.
Do your kids
just
share bedrooms?
make it work. So,
share bedrooms?
Do your kids share bedrooms?
Oh, my
Yes.
kids?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my kids are absolutely going to be sharing a bedroom. I will have a big enough house, and they will still have shared bedrooms.
Yes, I'm doing it, Tim. That's true, because mine is. I have it, because you know what? Dad has an office. My 2 girls, Avery has her own space, but... this isn't happening because but I make them share anyway.
Bedroom, but this is Dad's den, and this is
right.
Dad's microbrewery.
Right. Tell us where your office is going to be, where the
Unless
podcast
it
headquarters
has
is going to be
guest
at.
bedrooms. We have
Well,
2 guest
It has a
bedrooms.
closet and a window. It does not classify as a room, and therefore Daddy can steal it as his office.
You got to let them share because personal. This is my thing. Something I've learned about this too. This is not exactly on the finance topic, but it's relevant. I think that's our mentality. There's 2. Sebastian Junger wrote this book called Freedom, and I love this book.
Who is that? I don't think I've heard of
Sebastian
him.
Junger. He wrote War, Tribe. He wrote The Perfect Storm, if you've seen that movie.
Oh, okay.
That's his only. I think it's a fiction book, and he just did a book that
based
just
on the
got
true
released. Yeah, he just did a book on. I think it's called In My Time of Dying, about his experience with a near-death experience. But anyway. Freedom is important because what freedom is about is 2 ideas, and I kind of hinted at this at the beginning. Society generally pulls into 2 categories: nomads and people who stay in place, city dwellers who are agricultural, and hunter gatherers, right? And there's two mentalities with this, and this is transitions into like our tactical strategies, because you kind of got to figure out which camp you're in to start with, okay? And like, if you're living and putting down roots and building in a small town, the things that you are going to do, the things that you can do, are going to be different than if you are in the military or in a nomadic, you're a touring musician, or you're doing, you know, whatever you envision yourself. You're a photographer or a content creator that's moving a lot. And it's a difference of two different things. Hunter-gatherers, nomad types prioritize freedom and mobility and agility over, generally speaking, security. I'm not saying you can't have both. You can. But one lifestyle...
Let's say stability more than security.
Yeah, stability maybe. But even security to a certain extent, because you can save, depending on how much money you're making and stuff, but certain things, the big ticket items, historically, ipso facto property and those types of things, become more difficult to acquire and manage if you are, you know, moving constantly. So yeah, it's interesting because it speaks to things like the kid thing in the bedroom is a perfect example. Is I see it with my daughter Avery, who she's dug in like a tick. She's got her own space. She now that like, this is mine. I have to have this. Like, if I don't have like, I need to have this, like this little zone. She's like building up her own little area. And then when someone comes to take that away or comes into it, there's this sense of like, this is mine. And I'm thinking about this from a pastoral perspective, because I see the same thing happen. And there's things that are good and bad on both sides of this. School of Thought 1, hold everything loosely, easy come, easy go, low level of attachment, okay? Downside to that is it can be an excuse not to be a good steward, right? You need to not have any strategy or any attention to what you're spending or doing. But on the other side, when you're building and you're in the weeds and you got your macros and you're tracking everything and doing that, this can become
a god.
It can be the thing you find your security, your validation, your strength, and your comfort in, instead of the thing you're supposed to. And so I'm curious, like, how
there's no limit. There's no limit to how much effort you can put into the ladder of that. You can sink all of your time into
all of it. So as we're talking about this, and Nick, you know, as you talk about like some of these strategies, and as we think about that, like, that's something that I'm interested in, is like, how do you mitigate against that?
I'll give you mine.
You know,
so I'm actually so I love that. It super pivots well to a more tactical section. And so for me, I hyper prioritize stewardship and investments and finance, because I have two goals, and they're like hyper concrete. I do not want to work 50 to 60 hours a week all through my children's lives. I want to have more time with my family. And so whether or not I make it, I am racing towards financial independence. Doesn't mean I'm going to stop working. Financial independence by 45. That's my big, hairy, audacious goal. I have 9 years. I had 10. I'm down to 9. Clock's ticking. And so for me, if I can make it there, my oldest will be 13 years old. I'm still sad about that, but man, if I could spend more time with my family. And then the second thing is, I have realized I do happen to work in the nonprofit industry. I live in Lynchburg, Virginia. If you want to look up median salary, you will be very surprised how little I make. And so I am really good with my time for the kingdom. And so if I can get to financial freedom, I'm never going to be the benevolent philanthropist that can give a lot of money to do things, but I can show up and move the ball down the field in all kinds. In my church, I'm a men's ministry leader already, right? Like I want to go do more of those things. I want to show up to an org and say, hey, I know how to fix that. You don't have to pay me anything because I'm financially free. So like, I have these two goals of my target for financial freedom is not so we can have more, It's like, so we can do more kingdom things, and so I can set my children up for success in that same fashion, to be emissaries and ambassadors for the kingdom, and not be strapped to debt and strapped to slavery and strapped to paying off a godforsaken mortgage that of a overly priced house and all this. So like my motivation, my true north is that, which helps me because I think, yes, of course, I can easily fall into becoming too hyper fixated on money, and my wife and I tend to at times get into disgruntled conversations about things like that.
No way.
But for me, that true north helps because it's like, hey, this isn't for me. This is for us in the kingdom towards these ends.
I love that. I love the. I think this is like you talk about SMART goals, like I don't even remember the acronym.
Strategic, measurable, attainable,
and tangible.
I always forget R.
Anyway, whatever it is. But my point is, having a deliberate purpose and a very clearly communicable goal that you're moving towards, I think is a big deal, because when you're sacrificing for something, it's much easier when you know exactly what that is, and you're able to communicate that to your spouse, and you're able to say, hey, does this move us towards that? Because a lot of people, I don't feel like they have that. They're just thinking about this nebulous notion of retirement. And I see that all over the place. I see it in some of my mentors and older people in my life where, it's like, well, when are you going to retire? Eventually, maybe whenever. Like there's no mark on the wall that's tied to some greater purpose. And I think that's, where you're at. I have a similar goal. I'm going about it a little differently in the military, is like, I want to be done before I'm 50. So I'm working towards a pension, because I'm been in long enough and have that. But like, if I hit my pension, then, basic needs and stuff are going to be good, and I can continue to do exactly what you're talking about. But I don't want to give, my 50s, to the Army. I want to be able to dedicate that time to, my late 40s and 50s to ministry in exactly the same way, which is like, I want to be able to do the work that is required without having to worry about how to provide and meet, the fundamental needs. So like two different paths to that, and the things work, both ways, but I think that's really good.
I think that there was a study that was done that talked about how do you measure success, or what is the factors in success in any kind of venture, and perseverance is always one of the main things. If you don't succeed at first, persevere. Keep going. Don't give up. Just keep going at it, and you're gonna succeed. Also, there's some basic fundamental things that, like, there was a Harvard study that talked about, like, how do you stay out of poverty, right? Finish high school, don't have kids before you're married, and and essentially keep working, right? Like it's not a magical routine. Like, just don't make bad decisions that are going to affect you financially in the future, right? So there's simple tactics that I think that you can do, and we touched on it a little bit in regard to making good decisions, starting a retirement fund early, take advantage of your employer, but also, I think we're entering in a phase of life where back when I was a kid, my parents would talk about, well, I'm going to teach you how to balance a checkbook, and most kids don't even know what a checkbook is, right? And really how it was utilized. So having an actual strategy, and it's fairly simple at the most foundational aspect of it, of manage your money, know where your every penny is going. If you can't do that, if you're not there yet, get there, right? Manage everything that you're spending. And I'm telling you, it's easier while you're single, because then you can manage things. When you start adding members of your family that are spending money, kids, spouses, or dependents, it gets that much more difficult.
Know how
so
much
it's good
it
to set
costs
this
for a
foundation.
woman to dye
set
her
this
hair?
Foundation first.
I know.
Sorry, say that again. What did you say?
Do you know how much it costs for a woman to dye her hair? It's like
That's why my wife gave
Well,
up.
and it's never
I know.
just a dye.
We don't
It's
play
a
that
dye
game.
and a
Age
cut.
gracefully. Age gracefully, Laura. Age gracefully. I love you.
Do you guys?
All the love in the world.
Oh no, we could totally run down the rabbit trail of things our wives spend money on that does not contribute to the conversation we're
I
having
can't.
right now.
No, I
not
can't do
doing
that. I'm the problem.
Doing that.
This is the thing.
Oh,
I am
this is
fundamentally
true.
the worst of all of the people on this podcast. I am hands down the worst with money. The only
Everybody
thing
will
that I've
notice-
had. Yeah,
Notice how expensive Josh's microphone is compared to all of ours.
Yeah, we're not gonna talk about that. I have expensive taste, but this is funny because I do love this. I do believe this sincerely too, though, that like your walk with God correlates to this stuff. Because here's what I found. If you look like Matthew 6:33, seek first the kingdom and its righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. Now that's not prosperity gospel. What I'm saying is that when you are about the Father's business and you are doing it righteously, which is you are taking everything in your life, everything that you're doing, you're spending time in the Word in the morning, you're spending time in Christian community. As you see needs, you seek to meet them. As you see opportunities, as you decide what you like, how is how you spend your money not going to be permeated by your walk with God? And I swear that is the only thing that has sustained me financially until I met my wife.
That's
great. Then
great.
God gave me my wife, and she really should be the one on this podcast right now, because I'm gonna, like, in pure full disclosure, my wife manages our money because I am not to be trusted with it. So like my strategy, I'll go ahead and give you my tactical strategy
so
right here,
good.
because some of you guys need to hear this. Marry a woman who's better at money than you are.
There you go.
Amen. Amen.
That was my strategy. All right. It's like in Nick's
if that's
household,
not your strength,
Nick is
right?
the guy. Nick's got it all planned out, and he gets so excited about it, and he wants to tell me about it. And I'm like, bro, I hear you. However, you need to talk to my wife about that, because she's got the spreadsheet. She's got it mapped out. She's got the forward projections. She can tell you how much money we're gonna have if I can keep myself from doing stupid things by whatever time in history. So I just say that to say, if you're single and you're looking at life partners,
Yeah. There you go.
look at,
Run
like,
a credit
if you
check.
know you got a weakness,
Run a credit check.
like, yeah, step one. No, that
this
is
day
a
and
for real
age,
thing. That's a real
honestly,
thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, that's
Like,
not
what
a
is-
joke, though. Before you get married, like, if you can't be fully transparent with that person about either your, financial
Yeah.
past, or
Yeah.
I know couples who are actually married, and choose to, like, segregate their finances. Like,
Oh,
that's her
Don't get
income,
me
and then-
started.
Yeah, we're
That's
not
like
doing
my
that right
number
now.
one
We're
thing,
not
dude, in
doing that
marriage
right now.
counseling. Listen to me. No, we are doing it now, because it's a strategy. You want to talk about
That's a
success?
bad one.
One
Don't do
flesh. One
Yeah.
flesh, one bank account. I don't care
That's
where
it.
it goes, but like, it's our money. Like, if you
Amen.
if you
Tied to your
manage your own
spouse.
finances
Yeah.
separately, and you share like utilities like roommates, you're not operating as one entity. You're operating as two separate financial entities. If you file taxes separately, y'all need to come see me. Okay? Like,
Chaplain
It's
Hughes'
so
office
bad.
tonight.
go find talk to your pastor. Like, but that gets back to the root point, though, is that, like, why do we say that that's not ideal? Because there's a biblical principle
It's
that
a wedge.
is not coming
Yeah.
out. It's not being manifest in your practical, like, application
Question.
of it.
Because think about
What
what,
do you
happens. So
guys-
you have one
Go ahead,
who's...
Tim.
Oh, no, go ahead. Yeah, just,
I was
just
gonna say,
that
do
you have
you guys
one
use
couple
anything
who's...
to manage your money? Like, do you have a software solution? Because we grazed over that, but like that's a tactical strategy. Like I heard Excel sheet, but like Tim Anderson Hughes, you probably don't know. Do you guys have
No,
a
I do,
software
yeah.
solution? I'm joking.
Yeah, there's multiple solutions out there that you can pay into, right? I mean, something
free
is
ones, too.
like and free
Yeah,
ones
Mint,
as well,
you
right?
can
so
use
like
Mint,
you
you-
have
yeah.
Mint shut
Dave
down.
Ramsey has every dollar, and you can
I
either
use
have them.
Empower.
Oh, he doesn't do cash budget? Did Dave Ramsey finally, like, get on board with the fact that that's retarded?
Well,
Well,
'cause
here's the
is,
thing.
those are all just tools, right? They're
Sorry.
just tools to facilitate, and they're specifically geared towards helping people who don't naturally do that well facilitate it, right? And so, yeah. And so there's, but the misguided, I think, place where a lot of people end up with those is they think the tool is going to solve the problem.
No,
where it's like, guys, not
process.
spending the money is still going to suck. Like if
Yeah.
that's what you're used to doing. If
Yeah.
you're just used to spending it if you're just used to seeing something, wanting it, and buying it, the app is not going to make that hurt less for
No.
you
But
No.
It's going to make it harder.
The point of what I'm trying to say is, like, I mean, it might surprise you guys. I've engaged with a lot of people on this topic. There's a lot of people that they are not able to view all of their finances in one place. And that is a problem and not okay. And if you are listening right now and you are one of them, Empower.com is free. That's what I use. And there are paid ones. You can get some really fancy features with a paid one. But here's my point. This conversation for you as a listener can't even start until you have everything mapped and tracked in one place. The end.
Most bank accounts now, most banks will have some aspect of that where you can categorize your spending, where you can take every purchase and put it into a bucket, right? Like, and then you can track how much you're spending on groceries every month, how much you're spending on, fast food, or how much you're spending on daycare, or whatever it is. You can usually track that stuff, and that's helpful, right? So when it's tied to your bank account, either it will categorize it for you or you can categorize it. But when it's tied to your bank account, you can know exactly where everything is going, and you can do a little bit better on decision making in the future. But generally, if we're talking about like software, management software, and to Tim's point, this is for people that it is not what is the most beneficial for people that are not good at that, and especially beneficial for people that are
everybody.
I disagree.
I'm saying that it's especially beneficial. It's especially beneficial.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. It's especially beneficial for people, like, because especially if you're
wife
in
could
debt
do it on
as well.
a napkin though, because she
Right.
cares deeply about all that stuff. Is my point.
She's
doesn't
obsessive,
need
so
software.
she'll do. Yeah, well,
That's
right.
what I'm
So
saying.
we don't use
Especially
software.
if it's tied to your bank account. It's
Right.
if you're not obsessive about it and you're not checking everything,
You're not
and you
gonna
know
see
where
it.
everything is going.
Right.
It's done automatically for you,
Right.
to some extent.
Which is very helpful because, like, I mean, that's one thing that Danelle's always done. I mean, she's an electrical engineer and she does coding and stuff. So when I say spreadsheet, you might be thinking
It's
of something.
advanced. I know
what
what
I'm
you
talking about is like,
Yeah.
she basically wrote a program effectively in Excel that
built
manages
her
our
own.
money. Right. She does forward projections, like,
Yeah.
this is what I'm talking about.
'cause
You
that's what I
choose
do,
your
and that's why
spouse
I'm not,
correctly.
like-
Yeah, like, you don't have to, you pick the model you want. Like, I wanted one that doesn't necessarily need to go to a website. She'll just build her own.
Pick the
That's what I
model.
did.
Oh
so,
my gosh.
Unfortunately, the great irony is my wife could make way more money than me, and if we both worked, we wouldn't have to worry about money at all. But here we are prioritizing the education
Dude,
of
no,
our children.
that's not true. You will have money stress in your marriage at any level of income.
Yes.
Any level.
That's
yeah,
fair.
yeah.
You're right.
There's
You're
never.
right.
That's why you have to resolve those things. It's never like, oh, if we make enough money, or if we just made a little more, if we didn't have to deal with this, we wouldn't have arguments about money. You will.
That's totally true.
100%. I make multiples of what I made when I first got married, and those things still come up from time to time.
Right.
And I'm glad that we resolved them back then, because otherwise they just become bigger problems as they fester, especially as, I think it's each party has a different comfort level. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and I was like, the issue is, like, part of the reason, like, I manage my money so with such, like, miserliness, I guess, is that, like, I just have to have a certain threshold of resources available, or it makes me nervous. I'm not comfortable with it. And he was like, yeah, Tim, the problem is, for me, that's $10.
Yeah, no, that's me.
I was
Because
like-
I've lived with nothing, so I'm like, what are you stressing about? Like, we're
Yeah,
fine.
no
I'll make
fear,
more money.
right?
It'll be okay.
But Tim, on that, you talked about, before we get into more of the personal investment strategies and our personal investment journeys and stuff, Tim, you had talked about you resolved some of those things in your relationship early on about the finances. What are some of the core rules, financial rules for you that you've established?
Yeah, so one of the big ones is just, you actually do have to just match your lifestyle to your income. Like, I get that there's a temptation to, like, oh, I've got, especially like with diet, you can spend arbitrarily high amounts of money on groceries if you're obsessed with, and the fact of the matter is, you might not make organic produce type money. That's just possible. I was talking about, I ate, lousy, simple carbs when I was, making small amounts of money. It wasn't something that I had the luxury to go and eat, high quality this or, fresh that and everything else. And that's what I think a lot of people just can't reconcile, is that and it's not that those things aren't important. The healthiness of what you eat matters a lot. That doesn't mean you sacrifice your financial future so that you can shore up that one area. Sometimes you just have to say, I'm going to get there eventually, and you'll be able to do that for your children, hopefully, even if you weren't always able to do it for yourself. And just that willingness to actually identify what level of lifestyle your income actually provides and accept that and just move forward under those constraints, I think is where a lot of people, and because I am sympathetic to the young people who are renting and can't afford a house, but
living in a hammock in the
if I went through any of their expenses, I could find a bunch of frivolous stuff that they don't need to be spending money on that would empower them going into the future.
Okay. On that note, all right.
Where are we going?
Intangibles. Things to think about as well. Like, we talked about this a little bit in the last episode as well. Like, things like what you have to factor in your, like, one of the rules, I guess we're going to call it a rule, like in my house, is like, I live in Europe right now, so this is not something that's going to happen again probably once we move away from here. I doubt I'll live for, years in Europe again at some point in my life, maybe. And my kids are young. I made it my wife and I decided that we would rather save less and do more while our kids are in our home than the alternative, which is, and I'm not saying you can't measure that to a happy median, but like we will default to do while we have the means and ability to do it within reason. I'm not saying that we're like taking out debt for this, but I'm saying that but we're not we will not put in the bank, as opposed to we won't, it's not a debt thing, but we will spend
$10.
Right. We will default to that, because I've seen a lot of people save, not do a lot, and grind down while their kids were in the home, and then finally the parents retire and they're like, all right, we got money to spend now, but guess what? Your kids are grown. They're out of the house. They're in their prime earning years. They don't have time now to come and hang out with mom and dad. That's because they're trying to grind and earn. And then guess what? Then they have their own kids, and now they're grinding and trying to make lures. And that's why you see all these grandparents that are like, look, we got the new thing, and now you guys can come and hang out. Or, hey, we got the camper now. And it's like, oh, now you got the camper. Where was the camper when and it's like,
I had no responsibility.
Right, exactly. So I'm not saying, hey, no judgment. I'm just saying that was something that we looked at and said, you know what? We're not gonna if we have the ability, that stuff's important, because you only get that much time and you never get that back. And so I'm
gonna need you to stop on this.
Go ahead.
Somebody's chopping onions over here, and you can't keep going down that road. That's unacceptable. All your kids are going to grow up, and they're not going to want to hang out with you. You only got so much time.
You wait,
shut
buddy.
Your mouth.
You wait, and it comes faster than you know. My kids, I laugh now because even my kids still come and see me when I come through the door, but they're all doing stuff now. Now it's just my dog. My dog Argamon comes over and he's like, "Oh, Dad," and I'm like, "At least the dog's happy to see me." "Oh, hey, Dad." And
See,
I'm
that's what I don't want to hear.
Already?
I walk into my living room and I get this chorus, "Daddy!"
Yeah.
I'm like, "Yes, fan club right here."
Yeah.
It's never going to end, and I will not hear otherwise.
I'm here for you. We'll do an episode when it stops. You let me know.
Yes, I mourned the day that my son stopped calling me daddy and started calling me dad. Right? I
transition to bro yet?
Bro. Man, bro. That was not the rule for my house. There was no bro in my house.
My daughter says that. She says girl, and I was like,
stop it.
She's like, it's the same as bro, Dad. And I was like, do I call you bro?
I'm not your bro, I'm your dad.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no, she's not calling me that, but I just hear him say that, and I'm like, names. Names.
That's so funny.
Anyway,
And back to the point of we're not trying to be tone deaf here. We're talking about stewardship. So like
Correct.
everything is supposed to be balanced, right? Like grinding 7 days a week to get to financial freedom and then having no life with your children is absolutely losing. And that's
Right.
not what we're advocating.
No,
so
for
it's
sure.
like when I
but that's a
like-
conscious choice.
that's my point.
Well, that's
And
the
so
problem.
it's-
Is a lot of times it's not a conscious choice for
Well,
people. It just
correct.
happens, and then
Right.
they're running up credit card debt because they didn't decide what to prioritize
Correct.
up front.
So I
So
mean,
that's why I'm saying that as that. But go ahead.
Yeah,
Nick, I know
no,
what you're
but
saying.
like, and we're gonna say it, and we're gonna move past it. But like, money matters, but balance also matters, and so the proper prioritization of this, among with all the other plethora of things you have to be an adult about, absolutely matters. You can't ignore your personal hygiene and just focus on money.
No.
Like whatever the discussion is, and specifically if you have children, this conversation, it's like,
But no,
hey,
you lived in a
be
hammock.
there, be there for your. When you're single, you can do what you want. If you have friends that will
Get a
put up with
double.
your
I
stuff.
know.
And you can-
No, hold on, Nick. Hold on. This manifests. Let me tell you this, folks, because this is true. You laugh about that, but we moved out of our. I pulled the same trick again with 3 kids. I had a
know.
12
I know.
square foot box of a camper, and we moved out of our house in Washington 2 months or a month early so we could bank that month's rent, and we lived in that box and an outside tent for a month in a campground to bank the rent. So what I'm saying is timeless strategies, folks. Timeless strategies.
Timeless, right?
Do the right thing. Prioritize. Ruthless.
It is, yeah. So it is about being a good steward, and it is about making sure that you're managing what you have, and living in the in the state that you are. Right. Don't live above your means. The idea for a Christian listening to this, you have a responsibility. And, for you to have more responsibility for the kingdom, you need to be able to take responsibility for the things that you have. Seeking first the kingdom and righteousness, and all of these extra things will be added to you. But I wanted to talk and kind of make a point particularly about, when Jesus sends in Luke 9, when Jesus sends out the 12 disciples and to go and minister. Now, granted, this context matters, right? They're on a mission, they're doing kingdom work, and this isn't necessarily always, I'm not trying to put this in a box or even take it outside of the context that it is, but when God has called you to do something and he's called you to go somewhere, like he's gonna take care of you. So when in Luke 9, when Jesus calls the 12 disciples together, gives them a power and authority to go out and preach the gospel, heal diseases, cast out demons, he also says, take nothing with you for your journey, right? There is some aspect as Christians, being kingdom leaders, kingdom members, to rely on God. Like
100%.
there was
100%.
funding for Jesus' ministry. They could have gone out with their own purse, but he sent them out to go and live amongst the people, to do that work, and they took care. They would go into other people's homes, and in fact, one of the instructions that he was given later on when he sent the 70 or 72 out, he told them, don't jump around to houses, because what often would happen is the disciples would go into a village or a city, and they would be welcomed into somebody's home. But then somebody that had a little bit more means of like, hey, we got one of those bodets, you want to come into our city, and they're like, oh, by the way, oh man, we already committed to this. Let's move, right? Let's go. This is not jumping from one thing to the to the next. Understand the call that God has for you, and follow that. And if God puts you in a particular position, be faithful to that, what He has given you, and that will increase. So I did want to kind of put that theological aspect, at least from a kingdom membership standpoint, to say, look, even though we're talking about making wise decisions, we could talk about the parable of the talents.
I was going to go there.
That does not override what I'm talking about.
No.
Still make good financial decisions.
Right,
However,
but you have to make sure you're
understand
the
that
good
God's gonna
servant
take
with
care
the
of you.
talents and not the rich
For
young
sure.
ruler.
There you go.
right?
Right, yep.
Like,
But remember, that's by doing. And here's the other thing. The last thing I'll say in this before I hand it over to Nick with this is, there is a very important thing to think about. This is why calling is so important, and what Josh is talking about is like what it is. Your walk with God, these things that we're talking about are not hard and fast, and the reason for that is this: God is glorified in the confounding of wisdom. So what we're talking about is general revelation. If you do this, you will prosper. That's from God, right? Do these things, good things come from them.
Proverbs,
okay? Right,
Chuck
general
Hole.
Proverbs, right, exactly. Sometimes, God wants to teach you something. Sometimes God wants to teach other people who are near you something. When I had a 7-week-old baby girl, and my wife and I are both making dual income, and we're set, and we have a fast trajectory. If I would not have changed anything about what we were doing when my wife and I were both working in Maryland, we would never have had to worry about money ever. Like, we were set, unless some catastrophic, like if things projected, like, I'm not saying we wouldn't have, it wouldn't be a conversation. It always is, to Tim's point, but compared to 99% of the world, we would never have had to have real serious financial problems. That in that context, and everybody around us, outside of the people who were walking through this calling with us, looked at us like we were out of our minds, because they were like, "You're gonna do what? You're gonna what? Huh? Like, you've invested, you've done these things." But part of going into ministry, into vocational ministry, is learning dependence on God. And so God used that sacrifice of that stability for our sanctification, and to equip us with the tools to be able to look somebody in the eyes and say, I know God will show up because I have experienced him showing up. And there's a difference between reading that in a book, reading it if it's the Bible, and looking at somebody who has done that and being able to say, like, I see and I know you and I can touch, because it's the word made flesh. It's like it's alive. You know what I'm saying? Like, that testimony is living. And so this is not to diminish or to say, hey, you can forget everything that we're saying and just go with what your gut says. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is do the wise thing, but always understand that it doesn't excuse you from critical thinking. It doesn't excuse you from discernment, and it doesn't excuse you from growing close to God. If that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense. And I think that coincides nicely too, because it's like, there have been a couple numbers we've thrown out, but by and large, we're not throwing out numbers for that reason, right? Like, so the parable of the talents, like the individual who was given 5 and went and made 5, well done, good and faithful servant. The guy who was given 2 went out and made 2, well done, good and faithful servant. It's not about the number, it's about your stewardship of it. And the one who was given, I think it was 2 or 1, and didn't make anything, just buried it in the ground and came back with that same thing, that was like, bro, you're getting cast into the lake. Like, it was like harsh. It was like, that was real bad. It was like real bad.
Disproportionately harsh.
Yeah.
Real
Like,
bad.
that doesn't make
Exact
sense.
language with my money manager, though, buddy. You think 10%'s cutting it?
Yeah.
No. Gotta set standards.
Rookie numbers.
May you
I wanna-
Pump up those
be
numbers.
cast to the place where the worm does not die and the fire is not quenched.
I only email him with scripture quotes. It's just
I love that. That's it.
Weaponizing
That's
scripture.
so good.
That's so funny.
May the
All
Lord
right, so
multiply them.
I want to take us in a new track. So if you're still listening, we're going to get more hyper tactical here. I think this would be beneficial, also informative. I know Anderson was asking questions about how he was curious about different things I do, and I mean, we it's more of just us hanging out together. But I want to kind of, at least I'll go. You all don't have to go, but my personal financial journey, I think, is informative, because it can be a roadmap for other people to follow or to take pieces from. And by the way, let's just go ahead and put this out here. This is not financial advice. This is purely for entertainment. So anything that we say
I don't
cannot
think
be
we have to say
constrained
that
as...
if none of us are licensed.
Oh, you're not
Oh, we do
wrong.
actually.
However,
No,
but
we
still
do.
get
We do.
sued.
Really?
Oh yeah,
Really?
I was
For pretending,
I'm not a
for
CFA
pretending
or-
to be
All right.
licensed.
So the reason that I say it is imperative, whether or not you're good with money or not, that you be able to view everything in one place, is because if I look at my account, and I'm not bragging, nor am I saying this is the way, but for the Libertos, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I have 20 plus different financial assets, instruments, investments, things happening constantly. And so, because, back to the poker analogy, right? Like, you might be called to be a little bit more like Hughes, who has less assets and is more reliant on a salary.
God and
and
the
a
federal government.
God and the federal government. Okay, the way personally, we don't make a lot. My wife is about to stop working. We're making back to strategic decisions. We had this conversation. We started having children. I said, honey, you can stop working. That's totally okay. I'm not making you work. You just need to understand that things will look very different in our household. The amount of Amazon packages that show up on the front door, like lots of things are going to look very different if you make that decision, but we'll do it and we'll be fine. And she said, okay, let's do the daycare route. Obviously, we're super active parents. Let's be very intentional as family time on the weekends, family time after we pick them up from daycare. We're going to prioritize their socialization at this early age with their friends, with their daycare friends. And when our first child is homeschool age, she's going to do the homeschool route. It's not for everybody. It's the choice we're making. And she's going to stop working. So back to my big, hairy, audacious goal of being financially free by 45, I also have another clock. That clock started 4 years ago, and that clock was, we're going from 2 salaries to 1 salary. I'm doing everything in my power to replace my wife's salary, and I have 2 years left. And so it's like I'm scrambling to even do that. I'm literally, after this episode, going home because a hot tub is getting delivered, not because Nick likes hot tubs and has money to spend on hot tubs, because we have an Airbnb in our basement apartment. That Airbnb makes, I don't think I can say this, it makes $5,000 a year because I map and track everything. I literally know that without a question. And I think this hot tub will pay for itself in 1 year. And this Airbnb will now generate $10,000 a year with this one purchase. So I am taking money to make money. And I'll let you guys know next year if I'm wrong. Because I'm mapping and tracking everything. And so before I dive into my really quick soliloquy, and then I'll be quick, one tip that's worked really well for our family, which I do advise, is every month my wife and I sit down and we do family finance review. And that's what we call it. I put it on the calendar. I invite my wife to it, and we argue through it every single time. But now the going joke is, did we make it through family finance review without a fight?
Yeah.
And we're doing pretty good. We have a good track record going right now. All right, so paraphrase version. I haven't paid to live anywhere in a really long time because I rented for 2 years. Renting is like driving down the highway, rolling down your window, and throwing money out. So I stopped doing that. I got sued, and it wasn't my fault, and it was a crazy story. And I walked out of the courtroom owing $2,000. It was a crazy story. It wasn't my fault, I promise. And I swore I would never rent again. So 3 months later, I bought a house, and the day I closed, I moved all of my friends in, and they paid my mortgage. And from that day, 12 years ago, I have not paid to live anywhere in any of my homes because of roommates and house hacking and stacking and all that. And then through college, I worked 2 jobs. I, was like, okay,
took all the insulation out of his car.
I was definitely doing some crazy stuff like that. And then, when I got
the comparison,
I didn't
taking
mean to derail you,
all
Nick.
the weight,
all
the weight out of a car, all the weight
Guys,
out of a
there
car
was
to
like a
save
milk
gas,
crate where the passenger seat
living
was
in a
supposed to be.
backyard.
Okay,
I don't know.
Nick was like, "We can take my car," and I get in, and I'm sitting on like a freaking milk crate, like my feet on bare metal.
I saved so much money in gas. Let me just tell you, that's a joke. That's not true.
Young years were like
when
Scrooge
is a joke.
McDuck compared to
When
you
I
guys.
did buy my
you know?
house, guess what? The first $300. All right, stop. When
Okay,
I did
we're
buy
done.
my
Sorry,
house,
you're back.
guess what?
Take it back.
The first $300 I spent was to over-insulate my attic, and I have been saving on electricity bills from day one before I went and put solar on it 2 years ago. I'm pretty active on Robinhood. Pretty active in investing in Magnificent Seven, technology stocks, and then I'll stop because I could get super granular and I don't want to talk the whole time. But because we don't make a lot, and because we have less means than most. I am very strategic with about 5 to 10% of our net worth with more intentionally risky bets that could go to zero and it would be okay, but also they might go to a lot. And so they say if I could go back to when I was 22 or 23, like you have a higher risk profile when you're younger. And so I'm still taking advantage of that at 36.
Yeah.
GameStop, baby.
All right, I'm done.
the moon.
Someone else go.
To the
No,
moon.
I'm
I'm curious.
to a lot
Do you
more.
mind? Do you mind saying what you feel like your riskiest moonshot investment is?
I have. Well, Bitcoin for sure. I'm currently up 108% on my Bitcoin, so I'm doing all right.
That's good.
So Bitcoin
Today.
for sure. And then there's another one. It's not a lot of money because we don't have a lot, but we invested in Boxable. It's a company. When they did a private round, they're not a public company, so it could be a $0 investment. And then I have a couple. I just bought a bunch of the Ozempic stock. This is not financial advice. Is
that
Nor
for
is it
is that
necessarily
for
moral advice?
for performance enhanced fasting? Is that what the Ozempic's for?
Yeah.
Have you
Yeah,
seen
so you
the
can
data
be- Is that why we
now?
did-
It's
is
like,
that why we
it's like 1 in 4 people are on it now, or like it's
I don't
it's going up
understand that.
fast.
It was like
dude.
25% of adults have tried it at least.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So anyway,
my
I was like,
gosh.
I'm gonna ride up this train. So the short answer is all of my dials on all of our Roths, our 401ks are all dialed to maximum risk profile, and it's
Nice.
like if it all were to sink,
Let's
I'll
ride.
be okay. But like I will say, my financial performance in our retirement accounts has been, I think, at minimum 15 to 17% a year for the
That's
last
pretty good.
eight or 9 years.
So that's what they mean when they say
Oh,
faith
yeah.
without works is dead.
Anyway, so I'm doing all right. And then the financial investments into housing. That's another thing that I am pretty good at. And so I bought a bunch of houses, sold a couple, paid off my wife's school debt with selling one, paid off a mortgage because I sold one. You know, you can really start to what's called house hacking. If you're not paying to live and someone else is paying for your mortgage, you can do a lot. And if I could go back and tell my 22-year-old self that, I would have done it earlier. My gosh, man, if I knew what I knew now, what prices were on houses,
Oh, I know. I don't want to
I
talk
would
about
have
it.
bought.
don't
I
wanna
would have
talk about
bought
it.
5 houses. And
I don't
like,
understand why people didn't do that when we were in school. Like, why? Like, even if
Education.
I
Because
could go and
they
talk to
didn't
my
know.
It was
parents.
called 2007, and then everybody just thought, okay, maybe that was crazy.
No, you're
Okay?
right. You're
That's
right because
why.
you're right because houses were overinflated. You're right. That's exactly what it was. Because that's what happened when we were in college. Everything was inflated.
Well, no, there's another point here though that I think is yes, that happened, but I think the
big deal.
financial education component has been missing in a lot of the millennial generation. I don't know how.
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
know why.
These people know
we could,
nothing.
We could maybe talk about that, but like here's the thing I had no concept of. I can buy a house at 3.5% down and have a mortgage. Obviously, this was when interest rates were different, but a mortgage that was, I think my mortgage was
30%. It'd be 30 to
$700 a month.
40% cheaper
It was
than what you're
$700
paying.
a month.
Yeah, 30
and
to
I
40%
was
cheaper.
making $1,200 a month off of
Yeah.
renting each room out.
Yeah. I
and
know.
like, oh
Yeah.
my
I know.
gosh.
And that's
Oh
what.
yeah, I did the same thing. Bought my house and rented to young Carl and
Yep.
yeah,
a couple of our other
exactly.
friends.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that was like. But here's the thing. I knew this stuff. Like, this is what cracks me up, right? It's like I knew. I mean, for me, it just wasn't possible. Like, my parents didn't have the money. I just didn't have the means to do it. But I was like, dude, if I had the money to buy a house right now, that if I could afford to buy one, because this is the thing that sucked for us was that, like, and I'm not saying this to have a pity party or anything, but like, you graduate from college, you've been told I'm going to be able to make more than minimum wage. And that was not the case. In fact,
Correct.
in our generation,
That's
in
worse now.
2009, when I graduated from college, my friends who were trades workers were
Yep.
doing so
Yep.
well. And we
Yep.
were all suffering. All my friends who were mechanics, all my friends who were welders, or even like if they were graphic designers, or even it's like they were doing like a tangible. Anyone who was doing any other type of work, is it government or other types of things, like there was just no you were making minimum wage. So like it took a long time for like businesses to be able to hire and to provide a competitive wage for an entry level person. And really ultimately for me, that's why I enlisted in the Navy at 25 in 2011 because I was like, this is ridiculous. Like I can keep going on this route, plugging away, trying to do something and not getting a reasonable salary. Being enlisted in the military, day one, I'm making better than minimum wage. I get all the benefits and I'm guaranteed 5 years of work experience. The fundamental difference and this is, again, because you guys are going to be in the same boat. A lot of you who are listening to this are probably looking at a similar situation. What I'm trying to tell you is look at where you want to go. You're going to pay for it. I'm not saying this is easy. Being in the military is hard. It's not easy. Uncle Sam's going to get his, I promise. You will come away, though, with 5 years work experience, benefits, and like
free college,
the ability to then re-enter the workforce making a positive. And that's the fundamental difference. When I left the military in 2015, when I left being active duty, there were job offers for over $100,000 a year, and that was when the housing market was good. Had I not gone into ministry,
but
could have
setting
done
the
better.
military thing aside, which is obviously
Correct.
great opportunity.
Sure. Yeah, but that
I
aside,
was there at the same time though, and the critical aspect of that was the fact that you were building relevant, valuable experience at a time when a lot of other people said, "F this, it's not even worth working for." Essentially minimum wage to do white collar work, but then when things rebounded, they didn't have the credentials or the experience to do well. And so when I talked about making $8 an hour, that was at my same company, at an entry level job, and it wasn't super well paid, but I was from California, couldn't go back home to California in 2010. Right. That was not something that was going to.
It's not an option.
Do anything for you. And so my point is just that just continuing to invest in yourself, even when the short-term rewards for it they're not huge, is still valuable long term.
Go ahead, Josh.
Go ahead.
This is one thing on this, because you said about the California thing. This is another thing. I don't care where you come from. If you move, like if there's opportunity, if you like, I'm from San Diego, I just want to live there. Like, you will pay for that for decades. Understand this. You will literally pay for this for decades. Your little sentimental issue of like, I want to be at home with my family, or like I want to be near these people. It's like you need to look at that and actually weigh that out, because there are places like Maryland where I was spending $3,000 a month to live in a split level townhome.
Insane.
$1,000 a month. Do you hear me? Like, insane amount of money.
Yeah.
My wife and I made like, I don't want to talk about numbers. It was a lot, okay? But did not live great. I moved to Lynchburg, Virginia, and I will tell you this number. I made $50,000 a year. I had a house. I had a 5-bedroom house with a fully finished basement, a front yard, and a huge backyard with a fire pit, okay? Like,
why do you think I've never left?
Place.
My financial story is because of Lynchburg, Virginia.
I told Josh. Josh didn't believe me. We were both living in Maryland at the same time, right? And I was like, Josh, I'm telling him these stuff. He's like, that can't be real. That's not real. And I was like, come visit. So he shows up and he's like, I can't believe this place is real. How is this even possible? And you know what?
It's so expensive here now. It's not.
It is now.
It is. Now.
That ship
but
sailed.
then the point that I was going to make,
you up though, didn't it, Josh? Did it set you
absolutely.
Up?
Well, and the point that I was going to make, and it was, you really went to the direction I was going, is like, look, there are places to live where it's low cost of living, right? The comforts that I was living with, or the comforts that I'm living with, in Austin, Texas, where it's super expensive. That feeling of stability was the same as like Lynchburg, Virginia, when I was making tons less, right? Like it's you have to
like
make
half.
and munch like more than I guess the amount that the environment that you live in. Like the median income in Lynchburg, Virginia. We're picking on Lynchburg because that's what we know. But the median income of Lynchburg, Virginia, or some Boonesboro, or maybe not Boonesboro a little bit, but like some sort of like
bad.
yeah, that's a bad example. Boonesboro is nice. It's uppity Virginia. Anyway, it's some sort of small town, right? You don't have to be making $100,000 to live like you're making $100,000, right? So
Yeah.
it just depends on where you're living, what you're applying yourself to. And again, I totally down exactly with what you were saying. Like you want to live in San Diego because it's beautiful. You're going to pay pay to live in San Diego. You need to make
leads me to my next point.
$200,000 just to be just to be able to invest, make money, and survive. Right? Like it's crazy.
Yeah. No, I agree. Here's my last point. Just get an IT job, get a basic IT certification, and move to
Get
Thailand.
smart.
Move to Thailand.
Oh yeah,
Right?
yeah,
like
yeah.
here's another thing. Like real talk.
Love
You can move
Thailand.
to Thailand, and for like $100,000 a year, you could have like domestic help.
Castle.
And that's one of those.
live-
That's one of those 5-year horizon strategies, though, where you just have to do it.
You just
take
have to
the
decide,
plunge,
right.
and know that you're going to be set up better. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
You could do that.
Also,
though.
stop
Like,
financing things with a firm. What is
Yeah.
wrong
Oh
with you?
yeah,
What is-
that's
yeah.
trash. Don't
That
ever.
button
If
is
you're
garbage.
listening,
That's the
Yeah,
chump button.
no,
You
no,
hit
no,
that
no.
button.
Feel personal shame if you have ever. In fact, comment so that we can shame you, and then you will be absolved.
If you get a shame comment, just know it was
I've
Tim,
never
and you
met
should feel
anybody
special
who would
because he
admit
hasn't
to it.
actually commented on anything in our comment
Oh, my
section
goodness.
yet.
I don't
Speaking
know
of
But he'll do it for you.
passwords.
if you
It's
are
okay,
still
you'll have
here
that.
and you've gotten one takeaway, what's your favorite thing you've heard so far? Or strategy, tactic? I'm curious to know.
And what did you finance with a firm? Some of you
Yes.
done it.
Yes.
I want to know.
And that,
Yes.
which no one's gonna do. Of the
No, they
two,
will.
I'm curious. Do you guys have any like advanced, aggressive investment plays, strategies, or is it buy a house, have a salary, use a retirement?
No, I
income?
have. I invest in stocks. I have. I'm on Robinhood as
Like-
well.
Oh, okay, cool.
So I use.
Oh, yeah. I buy lotto ticket call options on companies. that
literally
will
what I do.
explode.
No, I mean,
just,
I've
like,
made.
it's a small allocation, but sometimes you get 10x. and it's
Yeah,
like, hey.
exactly. And then it's like nice. Well, I mean, I was really heavy into Bitcoin and crypto trading back in seminary. I did a lot of that then. When I was in a similar situation where you're at, I was like, I'm like not making a ton of money. I'm gonna move stuff around. So I built up a little chunk of change in my Robinhood account, and I basically I move that around. I'll tell you right now, and I have been for a while. Like I love to watch the news and move stuff around based on certain things. I try to avoid having to pay, capital gains taxes by,
You guys
trying
got
to
to
keep
get a
stuff
real
long term.
brokerage. None of this Robin Hood Zoomer
I know,
crap.
but here's where but I'll tell you right now, like I'm invested, and I'm invested in Apple, and I'm an Apple fanboy, which is part of the equation. But I mean, it's the most liquid company in the world for starters, and $1 billion in liquid assets, and they're going great. You know what I mean? So I'm happy with that.
Awesome. Well,
Tim's looking
I
at me
Don't know. I
awkwardly.
don't know if
I don't know
Wait,
what,
what do you
I
have
don't know
against
what you
Apple?
expect. What do you
have against Apple?
everything against Apple. I actually had AI generate me a picture of an android busting through the wall of a walled garden the other day to demonstrate to a coworker
like my walled
feelings.
I like both. Why not both? Can I have a walled garden? And it's like saying
They
I want to live in
literally
I
stop
want a
you from
manicured
doing that.
lawn. Yes. No. I have both things. I have a manicured, like I have a nice house with a manicured lawn, and I also have like the wilderness. My property.
What's your
on the
wilderness?
outside.
Explain to your
I
technological
don't have wilderness
to me.
anymore. I used to have wilderness. I used to have
Oh,
servers.
Interesting. I have both.
used to
No,
have a
not
network.
Really. I used to have both, and then I sold out and gave Tim Cook
Because
my
I don't
soul.
need it anymore. I'm a pastor, bro. I'm not a hacker, like tech guy anymore. Like I meddle.
I recommend Apple to plenty of people.
Yeah, people like me right now. That's who I is.
No, I don't.
I come
No,
home.
not people like you. You know better. You could do better.
You
could handle that stuff.
Based. What are you talking about? It never breaks. My stuff works all the time.
Never breaks.
Never breaks.
Comments.
Never breaks.
Light him up for this.
No,
No, I'm
I'll
not
take you
selling
out
the Android
one at a
army.
time. If whatever gets you in the comment section.
Yes, well, we've gone on for about an hour and a half here, and let me just drop this again. This is not a financial advice, so take with it what you will. Also, like and subscribe. Those 75% of you who are not subscribed but that are watching, you should definitely hit that subscribe and bell notification.
Right now.
But yeah, let us know what you think in the comments. Also, again, let us know what you want us to talk about in the future, and we'll
Grizzled
go ahead
Millennial,
and,
shout out. We're here for you, buddy.
Yeah.
You stuck with us. We love
favorite,
you.
our number one.
Hey, listen, you forgot something. We got to put this at the beginning of the episode.
Is this a comment or
How
something?
could we talk? Listen, we're getting real close. This is important. We want to recognize that we're 4 white guys talking about money. And our privilege is non-existent.
Right.
So feel free to like and subscribe and post in the comments.
That's right.
We love you.
I don't know how many
Goodbye.
comments we've gotten where it's like, 4
white guys.
Has 4 white guys telling us their opinion. Oh, how typical.
Forcing their religion down our throats. Hey, listen. You take it up with Jesus, okay? Like
Your comment, by
I'm
the way,
putting it
was
out here.
So good.
Putting it out here.
So perfect. Which, by the way,
Oh my gosh.
I don't think you were here for that episode where we were like, at the end of every episode, we should totally go like off script and just like give everybody a little treat of like the behind the curtain taste.
Oh.
Is that not what's happening right now? Is this?
That is what's happening.
now.
No, that's
Right
right
now,
now.
absolutely.
That's
You
literally
stuck
my
around.
point. I'm just
Yeah.
saying.
Hey, let's
it's
go
my-
through the
it's my
comments. You know
favorite-
what?
It's my
While we're
favorite
here.
time. It's my
do
favorite
this.
time.
Do
I'm
you
gonna bring
guys
up the
know
comment
how
section.
much a silver coin is worth off the top of your head?
Nothing.
What is it?
$27, $28.
I don't know.
Literally nothing.
I'm just curious if you know. Anderson, do you
Hey,
know?
Siri.
Have a guess?
1 ounce of silver is
Isn't-
probably like $30 right now, unless it's
Right.
gone up with gold. Did it go up when gold went up?
That's about $30. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just curious. I just keep one on my desk, and I'm just wondering if because that's my investment strategy is commodities right now. I've kind of.
Are you being serious or joking?
I'm being dead serious.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I can't tell.
Come on.
Cobalt mines.
Yeah, commodities. So like precious metals, but also like industrial metals, oil,
Interesting.
energy, uranium, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
What's
Yeah,
the
they-
I
return
want
you're
to get
seeing
into
on that?
gym
So, well,
trading.
just on account of the gold, I'm up like 25% this year
gold,
so far.
accounting for that fluke move. Other than that, I'm curious.
Let's see. I am up overall. Gotta log in real quick. Just go 6
And
months. 'cause
for
that's
those
what
of
it-
you who are listening, he's going to his app that shows him where all of his finances
Yeah,
are.
to
so
my
that he can
real
see them.
brokerage, not Robin Hood. It's like the
you
the
say it's,
Duplos.
is it Charles Schwab?
of-
Is that your real brokerage?
It's just
I don't
a
have to
fancier
answer your
name.
questions.
You do.
I don't know what you're talking about.
If your brokerage has a slot in a strip mall, it's not a real brokerage. Okay?
Hey, I'm shaming you.
I'd rather be
I'm shaming
make-believe
you right now.
No. How the table turns. Turntable.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
Ooh, anyway.
That was good. That was so good.
That's
You guys
like
use-
that's like when the financial planners call you and they're like, "Hey, I'm a financial manager. Can I help you?" And I like 5 minutes in the interview, I'm like, "You're selling life insurance. You're not a real financial planner."
Speaking of financial planners, not that this is super relevant for the listeners, but like when you begin to apply yourself extensively to this topic and this conversation, you learn very quickly the amount of money you waste using financial planners. Sorry if any of you are listening right now, but it's like if you have like a basic level of knowledge, like you don't need to be paying them the share that you
And
end
time.
up paying them.
No, 2 and 20. I don't think so. Not at all. Okay, I'm up.
Not a chance.
12% this year across all of my
Yeah, that's great.
post-tax investment portfolios.
yeah,
Telling you, just buy the dip on Apple. I'm long on Apple, and it's so good. Life is good.
Oh my goodness. Well, anyway, thank you all for commenting and pushing our videos. We had a couple of interactions within our Boy Scouts episode that some of you were not really happy with. Honestly, I mean, we're not recommending these videos to you, and if you are getting something out of this, maybe enough to comment on it, I appreciate it.
Maybe
But,
it's God
Yeah.
working
Yes.
through the algorithm, because why God is not the author of sin, right?
Yeah.
He's sovereign over it. to include the algorithm. So, take this as your indication that, God is reaching out to you and he's trying to get a hold of you.
Telling you to manage your
repent
money.
And, be saved. Yeah. But for real, though, like, it's funny to me that, the audacity. I mean, just think about that. Like, here we are, and this is really important, because if you're listening to this and you're not a Christian, that's cool. I get it. And I'm sure that a lot of what we're saying, or some of the things we might say, is offensive to you. I understand that, because we're saying that this is the way the world is, and this is what you should do about it. And if you don't believe in those first principles, you're going to find that to be really out of sync probably with what you believe. And you're entitled to that, okay? But, like, this isn't mass marketed, like, where we very specifically say that this is for Christians.